Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for everyone coming out. It's great to see such a big turnout. I think this is probably one of our biggest events yet. Really appreciate it. Great to see everyone after a bit of a summer break. Just quickly wanted to do the thank yous. So firstly, thank you very much to the CEC team. We love collaborating with you guys. It's always good to do big events together. From the Blockchain Association side, welcome to everyone. If you want to make sure you know about all of the events, please make sure you sign up to the email list on the Blockchain Association website, follow on LinkedIn. Similar with the CEC guys, if you want to make sure you see all of their events. We really appreciate everyone coming out, and I will hand over to Mark Piano, which he did a lot of effort into this, so also wanted to say a big thank you to him and to our speakers.
Cool. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. This is a really good turnout. It's also a really nice venue. We've been upstairs back in March, I think it was, so really enjoying this one. So my name's Mark Piano. I am counsel at Harney's. I've been here for just over 3 and a bit years. I came on one of the last flights out of New York, got locked down within about 2 hours of arrival, and Pietro actually was one of the first people I met virtually while in lockdown. So that was quite nice to see another human face on Zoom during the time. So I've been here for a while. All I've done now for the last couple of years is work related to cryptocurrencies, DAOs, Web3, NFTs, and all manner of work in that area. And one of the reasons I came to the Cayman Islands was because I really wanted to work in the crypto space in whatever capacity. And Cayman at the time, this is 2018, 2019, this was the place to be, mostly because there were crypto funds. And things have really evolved since then, and this is one of the preeminent jurisdictions in the world. Our guest speakers are going to talk about that as well, and hopefully we can all work together to maintain that. And one of the big draws of Cayman over other places is the community, so you're all a part of this as well. So we have Lennon Sweeting of Reiki, who also has a vast registration here, and hasn't just got his business here, but also relocated here. And fresh from Burning Man, courtesy of Nevada Search and Rescue, is Ryan Nixon of Horizons Law, who's a very good friend of the Cayman Islands. So Len and Ryan, why don't you introduce yourselves and we can have a bit of a conversation from there.
Sure. Hi guys. I'm Lennon Sweeting. I'm the managing director for Reiki. Reiki is a white glove over-the-counter trading business, so effectively a fiat on and off ramp. We operate trading desks in Canada, here in Cayman, and most recently we've just applied for a BASP and BVI as well. Really what we do is we help our customers get access into and out of traditional financial services and into the digital asset ecosystem, or vice versa. And we typically help customers who are high net worth individuals, crypto native businesses, and some quasi crypto institutions, I guess you could say. And really what we are is a liquidity provider, and we give people a great price in a transparent and compliant venue.
Yeah, hey everyone. My name is Ryan Nixon. I am the head of my firm, Horizons Law, which is based in the US. In addition to my law firm, I have a family office named Marin Digital Ventures. We do a lot of VC investing, pre-seed and seed, complements nicely with the firm. And on Island, I actually have a joint venture with one Mike Robinson, who's in the crowd, and we have a Cayman fiduciary shop named Horizons Global. So,
got a lot going on here. So there's lots of reasons why you could choose Cayman. There's lots of reasons why you could choose plenty of other jurisdictions. So there's a lot of jurisdictions right now who are seeing the value that this market can bring. They're seeing the direction of travel, that there's a lot of capital, there's a lot of talent coming into this space. People are pivoting careers, they're pivoting their investments, they're pivoting their entire business strategy towards servicing this space. And there's lots of jurisdictions over the years. I can think of some in Europe in 2016, 2017, plenty in the Caribbean and other areas that are vying and fighting for this sort of business. So Cayman's doing really rather well, and hopefully long may that continue to be so. But I mean, my first question for you actually, Ryan, would be, what was it about Cayman that appealed to you in the first place? And not just personally, but as a US lawyer?
Yeah, sure. So I think as context would be helpful. I've worked in the space since 2016. I've worked with some very notable projects like Solana, MyCrypto, SNX, Agoric, X token. I mean, there's been a ton, right? I've gone through various routes assisting these projects in spinning up their token foundations or their token structure, whether it was onshore earlier on and offshore, which is sort of definitely the move, I think, considering the regulatory climate. I've gone through the Swiss route. I've gone through the Singapore route. I've started a Seychelles company like BitMEX, right? And obviously I've done a lot of work with projects, liaising with Harneys and others on island to spin up projects with a Cayman BVI model. I was very pro-Swiss when it first came out. I was doing some work in Switzerland at the time with Polkadot at Web3 Foundation. The Ethereum Foundation was set up in Switzerland. It was sort of the gold standard. I thought at the time, I said, hey, this is the way to do it. Got very close with Polkadot's general counsel at the time. Spoke to Solana. Was general counsel with Solana at that time and said, hey, we need to do this in Switzerland. Went through the process. It was laborious. It was expensive. They have like tax optimized sort of structures, but you have to prove this sort of like, nonprofit foundation. It just was a lot of extra work that didn't appear that way on its face. So gone through that structure. We did it a couple more times, mostly for projects where the whole entire team was based in the UK and they have some sort of nexus to Switzerland, because getting a bank account over there, everything is just ridiculously hard, ridiculously expensive, and takes very long. So while that was going on, at the same time was doing work, obviously, with Harneys, some other law firms on island, and really do feel from deep experience that the structures that you guys utilize, the Cayman Foundation Company, I know that's also sort of a newer structure. I think it came like 4 years ago or something. Yeah, 2017. It being an ownerless structure, I think also fits nicely for these projects that are trying to be decentralized, that don't have a real owner, right? Like token holders sort of control the protocol, while having an ownerless Cayman Foundation, while a novel entity at the time, I don't know if that was the reason why it came about, has fit very nicely with Web3 projects. So yeah, I mean, I can go into a ton more detail, but.
Originally, the Foundation Companies Act was meant to offer a corporate trust structure, just so happened to be launched around the time of the ICO boom, so it was quite a convenient piece of legislation which has been very well utilized since then. And then Lennon, you're coming in from a different perspective. You're coming in as a service provider who's looking for a jurisdiction to set up shop in, at least from a business point of view. So what was your thought process, and how did you land on Cayman as the jurisdiction of choice?
Yeah, so my background was in traditional markets and got into crypto 2018. Bitcoin was at $20,000. Everyone was raising money, and became the head trader at a Canadian firm called CoinSquare. And what I saw there over my time there was, a very new business trying to fit into a very old regulatory framework, or not old might be the wrong word, but antiquated as it pertained to a new novel market. And then I decided to start Reiki and got to really see it for myself as not just a sales and trading guy anymore, but an operator in the space. And we kind of struggled to find our place in Canada from a regulatory standpoint. We still have our Canadian business. It's a money service business. I'm not so sure that money service business regs are appropriate for the business that we run, because there really hasn't been much legislation drafted specifically for what we do in Canada. There's been a big push to get exchanges and crypto-oriented businesses, especially trading firms, to fit within a broker-dealer model. But again, this really hasn't been legislation drafted specific to the asset that we're trading and the way that we operate. So 2021 comes around, and one of the partners in Reiki had already been here for a few years and was very involved in the space, and caught wind that SEMA had introduced, digital asset specific legislation that might suit our business better in the long term. And so we decided to proceed with an application. It took us about a year, and I think what we got through that was that there was a streamlined process and kind of a clear, for the most part, clear framework for us to operate our business within. So I think for us, that really gave us some comfort that we weren't going to get on the wrong side of regulatory legislation, because when we set out to start the business, we really did want to operate a very compliant, transparent, kind of client-first business, and so providing a transparent and compliant and audited venue for clients to interact with us was really important, and this jurisdiction gave us that opportunity.
Fantastic. And interestingly, it wasn't just having your business structure here, having the regulatory license here, you moved here. And that's not always something which people want to do or feel is necessary, but you're here, you've been here for a while, your business partner was here for years prior to that. What is it about this place that isn't just, let's get our company set here, let's get our registration and license here, let's move here as well? What was the process that made you decide, yeah, this is the move for me?
Yeah, so I mean, there's the obvious factors as a guy from southern and central Ontario that has 6-7 months of fairly harsh winter. The weather was a huge draw for sure, but no, really I think so I came down here in February after we'd gotten our approval. First time here, never been here in my life. Got off the plane, obviously, just kind of, we had some meetings, and I got to meet maybe, I don't know, call it 10 people who are kind of in the crypto ecosystem on the island. And I really got like a good vibe. And when we set out for the registration here, we intentionally set the business up as an ordinary corporation that could do business onshore locally, because we did believe that there was maybe the market was underserved. And when I visited, those thoughts were really kind of confirmed to me, and then there was all the weather and the taxes friendly here and all of that good stuff. As a Canadian, that became very attractive to me. So yeah, I flew home. I was only here for a few days. I flew home. I told my wife, who was a couple months pregnant at the time, I think we should move to Grand Cayman, and she said yes. And a few months later, after our daughter was born, we decided to move down. And we've been here for a year now, and it's really been a great year, and can't wait for more to come. But I think there's a very unique community here that would be very hard to find in a lot of other places, just because this is a small community, and so it's I think people are very quick to identify like-minded individuals.
Yeah, there's something about this place, and we've got a couple of people in the audience who have gone through the same experience. They've come here for a visit, they've seen opportunities, and they've decided to make the move. And there's something about the community here, the international nature of it. It's something you can't really find anywhere else. It's in a very small island. There's very much punching above its weight globally. And Ryan, you come here often enough, you're basically a very familiar face anyway. What is it about this island for you that keeps you coming back, that isn't just a place to send clients to, but is also a place to spend time, to build connections, to be part of that community?
Sure, yeah. So I'd say, like, I have been very impressed as a U.S. lawyer, as just a lawyer generally that spends a lot of time speaking to and working with lawyers from different jurisdictions. Our work with Harney's, obviously with you, Mark, has been very just exciting, interesting. I do think to do well in this space, for lawyers to do well in advising in this space, you need to understand the tech, you need to understand what's going on, you need to deeply understand these structures. And I mean, we've been on a lot of calls, Mark, where it's, you're digging into the tech. How does this, token launch look? right? Should it be maybe a separate setup, a different setup? Are we going to add something different because they have an ecosystem fund, et cetera? I do think the type of specific work that's necessary to really give good advice to these projects, sort of echoing your point, I mean, it's a really just great, close community here, and it seems like most of like these very strong firms, you know, you're able to take a more like strategic approach, thoughtful approach. It's not just, you know, cookie cutter for each project. It doesn't work like that, you know. The incentives for protocols, what they're trying to build, all those things are very important. So that's on the work side. On just the Cayman just being here side, I live in Miami. I really do love coming to Cayman. I think it's an excellent place. You know, would love to look further into eventually getting something over here, maybe as a second home, but you know, first things first, right?
You hear that, Mike?
Mike would love to see me every day.
But you make some good points there. The service providers are a key thing that keeps people in the jurisdiction and remaining in the jurisdiction. And I recall back to 2016, 2017, when quite a few other jurisdictions, perhaps smaller, perhaps with not the same level of infrastructure as Cayman, were making a play for crypto. And we had some projects move there. I was looking at it from a different jurisdiction. I was in the Channel Islands. And the jurisdictions that were making that play did a lot of marketing. But then on the ground, there just wasn't the capacity to service quite a unique at the time and very novel sector. And so even though the play was there, the tax incentives may have been there, the day-to-day just wasn't able to be serviced to the level of sophistication or speed that the clients needed. And what I found here, speaking with people in the community and looking at the breadth of service providers, whether it's fellow lawyers, accountants, the DAO management companies that have filled a very big need here, they understand the space and they are drawing upon the jurisdiction's reputation for many decades as a preeminent fund jurisdiction. And they're taking that very high level of international caliber, the people they recruit from, the work ethic on the island, and they're adapting that across to an extremely fast-paced industry. It is 24/7, and sometimes that reflects in the hours, but it's just how it is. But we're able to service that, and we're able to adapt in such a way that we can see what's coming on the horizon. We can see what's coming on in the US on almost a daily basis right now, and making sure that we're well placed to serve and receive the client requirements and structure for that, and the ancillary services required for that. And that's what I think sets this jurisdiction apart, and as you say, the community as well. And then Leonard, from your perspective, you're looking at the BVI, you're applying for a VASP registration there. Are you going to be moving over there anytime soon, or is this your home now?
I mean, I don't think I'll be moving anytime soon. We really applied for the VASP and BVI. We were already operating our business there prior to the legislation being introduced. So it was either, you know, close up shop or follow through with the registration. It was always on our roadmap to apply for that. I think, you know, we're not. That's not really meant to be a core part of our offering. It's more something that's going to sit. We hopefully get the approval, and it's something that'll kind of sit on the shelf in case we really ever needed it. But from a lifestyle standpoint, I mean, I've never been to BVI. I'd never been here when I moved either. But you know, I've heard there's no golf courses in BVI, so that would probably be if anyone who knows me, that would be a big issue for me. So yeah, I don't think I'll be going to BVI unless they manage to muster up a new golf course. Then I might think about it. Yeah, no, unlikely though. Yeah.
Sounds like an incentive to them. So, question for both of you, and either can take it first. What do you see as the main kind of challenges or threats for the jurisdiction, and what they need to do to maintain that position? You've got other jurisdictions who want a piece of our lunch. They want to get some of that market share. They've seen what's kind of almost organically evolved, and they want a piece of that, and they're willing to spend, they're willing to put in place the incentives, maybe change the laws. So what can we do as a jurisdiction and as a community, and what we've built up to maintain this market leading position? I'd be curious as to your thoughts.
I I think that's a tough question for me to answer as a guy, as a registrant that's kind of participating within the ecosystem, as I don't have as much of a view onto what's happening outside of the jurisdictions where we operate. We obviously keep our eye on what's going on in the U.S. and the UK and Europe and kind of some of the major onshore markets. But in terms of other offshore jurisdictions, I don't have as much of a good feel about it. I think that, as I kind of mentioned earlier, I think you would be hard-pressed to find the community that you have around this asset class that we do have here elsewhere. Because that is a really unique part of being here. There's just so many participants in this market that have made the move here, that are investing in real estate and putting roots here and starting businesses and getting registrations and setting up structures that suit them, that I just don't know if you'll see all of these people that have already made this big investment and change really pivoting so quickly to go into other jurisdictions. So I think that some jurisdictions are probably behind, and then I think other jurisdictions maybe just might need to just kind of scrap everything and start over. Yeah, that's, I guess, my take on it.
But also you said you found doing business here, the registration process, relatively straightforward. It was a known quantity and...
Yeah, we as I said, we applied in 2021. We worked with Brian Patterson at Denton's, and Brian pushed our application forward, and it took us about I'd say close to a year, a little bit under a year. We from the kind of time we really took the first step to getting the approval. And it was a fairly, while it may have taken a little bit longer than we might have anticipated, simply because we are also coming from Canada, where things just did move faster. There was a lot less obligation on us as a business. We certainly are more heavily regulated here, and I think we have much more communication with the regulator here than we do in Canada. So Canada is a little bit more of a box ticking exercise, where I think SEMA did take the time to understand our business and really see what the service was that we're offering and how we handle it. And so, yeah, it was a fairly straightforward process working through it. And the other thing we found after the fact, because we did do a lot of the work, putting together policies and governance and things of that nature around our business, which again we were not used to. We did a lot of that work ourselves, and when we did get here, we found we don't really have the chops to be doing that as we operate the business, and we found that there were great compliance firms providing service unique to digital assets. Audit firms that were capable and had done the work to kind of get up to speed on how to audit a crypto firm. And so that's kind of, I think, also what makes us pretty sticky in being here, is that I don't know if we'll find that elsewhere.
Yeah, agree with all of that. I'd also say Cayman, being able to what you said earlier, Mark, like go at the same pace that these crypto projects, that pace is a little different. It is sort of a 24/7.
Diplomatic.
Yeah. Needed this yesterday, even though I just told you about it 2 minutes ago. When can you get it done? That's the lifestyle, right? Everybody in crypto is sort of addicted, right, to this, the excitement, the ups and downs, the swings are crazy, but the community and those that are lifers, like they do see it as like the next big thing. I frankly am, admittedly also a lifer. I do think crypto will be ubiquitous eventually, and I do think it'll be. This is crazy, but I do think it'll be a whole new world in the near future. How does Cayman keep that? I think where firms, service providers are able to adapt that pace, are able to adapt to how people in the digital asset space communicate. Mark, I'm sure you know this well. We're a law firm. We send emails like law firms do, but we do most of our work on Signal or Telegram, right? Or sometimes in Discord forums. You have to be able to communicate quickly, efficiently, get your point across, almost at a blistering pace all the time, you do get used to it. So I think that would be the first thing. The more, again, attorneys, service providers here can adopt that mindset, the better. And then two, I mean, I do think there is a major opportunity in Cayman, considering what has gone down in the U.S. in the past 6 months in the baking sector. And
I thought you meant yesterday.
Huh?
Thought you meant yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, no, feels like it. But I know this is something that would be handled like carefully on island, considering how things have been done, which frankly I think is a good thing. But if there was something that could really solidify Cayman as sort of the premier jurisdiction for the long term, I would say that, right, at the baking side. And just a quick comment to piggyback on what you said earlier about some of these other jurisdictions. Every cycle, there's like a new jurisdiction that's sort of du jour, right? And that could be like it was Malta, Luxembourg for a bit last cycle. This cycle, it's UAE. And being a U.S. attorney, we do get great experience where we can advise the clients, hey, this is why you should do Cayman BVI, like for these obvious reasons. I've done the Swiss route, like here are the issues with that. Maybe you don't want to go that way. UAE came out very strong, so we had 2 clients that wanted to do their fundraising in UAE, and then everything sounds great and it's quick and easy, but then when you actually dive into it, there's all these little tricky things that are under the hood, right? Like in the UAE, I mean, don't quote me on this was like a few months ago, but I do remember for any sort of enforceable like right for an investor, they need to be like notarized and then entered into this public registry. But getting that notary, it's not like, I don't know how it is here, but in the US, you can have like a mobile notary. It's not a big deal. Over there, it's expensive, it takes time, and ultimately it ended up like we had to restructure the whole deal, and the fundraising almost fell apart because the client was like, UAE. So it's interesting because part of our advisement is we have to give the best advice. If the client still wants to go a particular route, we have to go that route. There's always lessons learned in that. And then we quickly try to apply those lessons learned to other clients going forward. So I will say the one thing that I've always really appreciated about Cayman is that these other new jurisdictions that pop up that try to compete, it sounds great. It sounds awesome, like let's get all the crypto projects to go over there. But when you really dig into it, when you're spinning up tons of foundations, when there's lots of projects launching, I mean, there's a real pace there. And I don't think any other jurisdiction's been able to do it to the degree of sophistication, professionalism, and just frankly, like practicality that comes in Cayman. That's it.
No, I'd agree with that. And the foundation company is a good example. It wasn't intended to be used for this. It's not why the law was introduced, but it works really, really well. And you can often see, even without any kind of marketing or push on the service provider side, you see online when people discuss amongst themselves, what's the best structure, what's available. They'll do a analysis, they'll talk among themselves, and often Cayman ends out on top. In whatever kind of multilateral analysis you do, it is by far the most flexible vehicle for a lot of different projects. And then you combine that with the regulatory regime for projects such as BACI. Cayman was one of the first to introduce it in 2020, and it's been staffed up on the regulatory side, and they've got experience in processing the applications. It just has all of those different appeals depending on the type of business that you want to have based in the jurisdiction. Now, obviously, being regulated here is not going to be especially now, a green light to go and operate in any other jurisdiction. You've got financial promotion laws coming in the UK. I think that was the case in Dubai. That will be coming over in other places too. But this, without necessarily spending a huge amount on jurisdictional marketing, without an artificial push or an attempt to create a market, my impression at least, and I suspect this may be the case with you and maybe others in the audience, is kind of grown organically over the last few years. And we've got Matt in the audience who worked on one of the first foundation companies in 2018, 2019? 2018. So this was a thing even before people knew it was a thing, Dash Foundation. And so it's grown organically, and now it's really taken off. And now there's a need for service providers to work at pace as the instructions come in, to be able to service to the standards that people expect, because the reputation that comes with Cayman is the service providers know what they're doing. They can work quickly. They understand what's going on. And so to be able to perpetuate we need to have that ability to resource at the speed that people expect. And this is what I quite like about the jurisdiction, is it's grown so quickly. And that's why I think there's an advantage here. Rather than trying to artificially contrive it, we've been able to just shout about our strengths, and then people have found by natural research or comparison that this is the place to be. And so almost a case of more of the same, please. But you've seen other jurisdictions. I mean, Wyoming, they had the LLC, which I think is probably quite unfortunate given the wider hostility we've seen in the last year or so. We've got Marshall Islands, which has an interesting structure, but they don't necessarily have the same regulatory certainty as the VASP Act. And that's some of the clients that we have want to see certainty around, okay, where do I stand, rather than let's try and get some arbitrage going on or slip in between the cracks. And so that was one of the points that you made, Lennon, that coming here, the VASP Act was in place, the infrastructure was set up, you knew what to do, it was a relatively straightforward process, you knew where you stood, rather than having to find out what was going on, kind of try and get grandfathered in, hope for the best. So there's now a jurisdictional ranking which Cayman stands towards the top, whatever your kind of standing is or whatever your business model is for crypto. And then it just so happens you've got a great community, it's a cool place to live, lots going on. So it kind of builds upon itself as well. And so hopefully for people here who it's their first event, people who are watching this because it's being recorded, this is giving you a bit of a flavor of why Cayman is where it is in the market, and hopefully it will stay that way. But if you have any further thoughts on what the lifestyle here is like and how that's compared to other places you've been in Switzerland, for example, be curious as to hear what your thoughts are there in terms of the crypto community there. We've heard of Zug, Silicon Valley of Switzerland, any other jurisdictions you've been to, Dubai, for example. Be interesting to see what the communities are like there as well.
Yeah, so I haven't been to Dubai yet. I've spent some time in Asia. I've definitely spent a lot of time in Switzerland. I go at least twice a year. I'm very close with a big fund out there in which I'm an LP, Dialectic, so I always try to stop over. So I've spent time in other parts of Europe. It's interesting because I think to do well in the space, again, you have to sort of be a lifer and buy into the mission. I've seen very little of that sort of dedication from like Swiss firms, and like this is like MME, like we work, we've worked with a lot of notable firms, and they have a decent new partner that's like trying to sort of bring back the digital asset practice. MME is the firm in Switzerland that set up the Ethereum Foundation, so they have that notoriety, but they had kind of fallen off. That said, I could put some of my junior guys in front of partners at some of these other firms, right? And we've gone through these things so many times, and not to debate on Swiss law or US law, but just on how to think about these projects and look at the structure and what it means. And, it's sort of been our like not secret moat, right? Where everybody that does come to work at my firm, like they have to get it. Like I'm a deep crypto person. I have a lot of different projects, like, assets that I've invested in. We do a deep technical dive into the white paper, like this is what's necessary. And I think that same level of dedication that we've put into working with clients, I've only really seen it here, at Linnet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably looking at it from a slightly different perspective, but most of my time starting in crypto in 2018 was in Toronto, and Toronto definitely has a pretty thriving crypto community. I think it did really early. Canada, I think, really Bitcoin caught on pretty quickly in Canada, and there was a lot of people in the space from very early days. And when I first got into the space, 2018, 2019, the meetups and all that stuff was there. They were packed, and that kind of definitely died out a little bit over the years.
As the price went down.
Yeah, as the price went down, of course. Yeah, but most recently, I was up in Toronto in I guess it was sometime in August for the Futurist conference, and it was actually nice to see it had a pretty good turnout, and a lot of people got to buy tickets, and there was a lot of people that came out to it, and it was good to see. But at the same time, I think that what was there was a lot of mostly service providers in the space. So other guys like me, sales guys, and we're all like yapping at each other, trying to sell each other something. And you get a different group come out to events like this, I think, where people are genuinely just interested in the space, or have like play a very key role in the space where you can probably kind of help each other out, and a lot of people are doing very different things. So again, don't have a ton of exposure to other jurisdictions and what that might look like, but that's at least what I've seen.
I'd agree with that. And the community point is important. There's so many different events that go on here. We've got the CEC and BACI event tonight. You've got the Crypto Curry Club that happens once a month. I'm looking for Cobus, who, there we are, organises that with Daniel. There's the events at GT Outpost. There's always something going on, and there's been a couple of people on the island looking at you, Greg. When you arrived, there was a lot of events to go to. There's a lot to see and do in a very short amount of time to get a flavour for just how much of a community there is. And that, I think, is a key draw for people to come here and then stay here. And then another point on the jurisdictional element, and this is what we're seeing increasingly, these structures are multi-jurisdictional. They might be, in a sense, decentralized to an extent, because there's not one jurisdiction where everything is housed. Different jurisdictions have strong appeals for particular activities. The Cayman Foundation may be at the top of a structure, but there are certain jurisdictions where it's better to run certain activities through than others. Intellectual property, Cayman, BVI, some other offshore jurisdictions may not be the best place for that, but there is a jurisdiction, one or more, where that is an appropriate place to put that in. Yeah, so it depends on the tax considerations, the legal considerations. So the future may be plural, where rather than trying to steal market share from a jurisdiction, each jurisdiction plays to its strengths as part of a global structure for a global business. So it'd be interesting to see how the market responds to that and how jurisdictions position themselves. But I think it's fair to say Cayman has done incredibly well without really trying to force it. It's just kind of evolved, thanks in large part to some of the people who have been in this space, in this room, for many, many years. So I don't know if you've got any additional final thoughts, but then we could maybe go to a Q&A.
Yeah, I just have, one final comment. Going back to your earlier comment, Mark, about, what else can participants and service providers on island do to keep this sort of the premier jurisdiction. The one thing that I have seen that's interesting is with my practice, we work with Harneys, right? Campbell's, Walkers, whatever, mostly Harneys, TTA, just to say. But there's a crop of smaller firms that aren't crypto native that are just sort of will do whatever work you'll pay them for. They come in, they try to undercut, these more renowned firms. We are strongly against that, right? Because you need somebody that understands this stuff. You get what you pay for. That's but it's table stakes. You want to have a global, international billion-dollar treasury. Okay, well, might have to pay some legal fees. Same to me, right? Same to my firm in the U.S. It would be interesting to hear just thoughts around, what do you or others on island think about some of these other shops that are really just trying to undercut and frankly could, cause problems, right? Because, for example, not to give names or anything like that, we worked with a project where we were going through the process with them. We realized they were being a little inaccurate and frankly, I don't want to say fraudulent, but it didn't pass the smell test. We terminated them as clients. They went to Fenwick. They didn't work with some other firm. They went to some whatever shop, spun up, and I still see them on Twitter, and I do know under the hood that there's issues, but obviously for privilege I can't, talk about it. Yeah, I'm just curious to hear your thoughts, Mark, or Lennon, on what this, how you guys handle that or would approach that in the future.
Probably fair to say, Lennon, that when you worked with Dentons, you were confident that they were suitably advising you, that they were experienced. And I think, again, the lawyers who work in this space, from my experience, the ones I encounter on a regular basis and deal with and that speak with on the blockchain committee, they're almost exclusively focused on this. They've been in this space for a very long time, constantly up to date with developments, and they're not trying to bluster the way through. They have the commitment to the space, the commitment to the client requirements, and are willing to stand behind that. And I think, again, the service providers here have that dedication. They've applied the skills across. I think the ones who want to try and move into the space, always great for having new entrants because there's plenty of work, quite frankly, but they need to be able to understand what the requirements are and to be able to demonstrate that to the clients. And the clients now, maybe not so much 2-3 years ago when this was all very new, they're very savvy. They know exactly what the requirements are. They've got a fairly good idea of what the red lines are, and they can pick that up quite quickly. They can understand whether the service provider is genuinely able to give the product or the service that they need to the extent required. And I think it's always good to have more market entrants and, frankly, more lawyers and service providers in this space because there is a demand. But I think there's a level of sophistication that is demanded and required that takes a bit of time to kind of be in a position to offer that on a quite wide scale basis.
Yeah, fully agree.
I don't have much to add.
Okay, so mindful of timing, so I might open it up to the floor, and this is where we always have stunned silence or a load of questions. So we've got a wide range of people here. For some, it's your first event. Some, this is some familiar faces. Be curious as to your thoughts as to why you moved here, for example, or what your experience has been working with other service providers. Oh, here we go.
Mark, when I moved here, Cayman's claim to fame was to have the highest number of fax machines per capita in the world. That was the technology of the time, and law firms had rooms full of fax machines to be able to run. So I saw this kind of new development happening a few times. We had the fund business, we have the reinsurance business, a lot of things happening in Cayman. And I totally agree with you. What makes Cayman special is the community and the government willing to work together to make the environment receptive to new business without really going out of the way just to attract business without having the substance. So that's the key element of Cayman. And last weekend I completed 29 years in here. So this is a great place to be for business and for life. But I've been involved in a number of different industries. And so my point is, every industry always complains that the regulators don't understand their business, that they don't allow them to grow, that laws are falling behind. So what's your view on the regulatory environment in Cayman at this moment for this environment? I think we touched it a little bit, but perhaps to explore it a little bit more.
None of my clients who are set up here have left, especially in the crypto space, and I think that speaks volumes. So yeah, it's if you manage the expectations on what can work here, what can't work, with the caveat that things are changing very quickly in the global macro space generally, especially with things going on in the US and other jurisdictions, this jurisdiction works incredibly well for a range of certain things. There are certain things where it may not work, whether because of regulation or because of certain reporting requirements or ownership, but you make that clear at the outset so nobody is sold something that then isn't fit for purpose later down the line. So yeah, I haven't had any continuations out, and all the clients are keeping us very, very busy, new and old. Cobus?
I will say I also appreciate and just quickly, I also appreciate just the clarity in the regulations out here. I mean, obviously in the US, we're begging for that, even if they're draconian, like just give us something to work with, frankly, right? So,
Consultation right now.
yeah. So I do say like that is definitely something that is a strong, in my opinion, plus about the island. Yeah.
And congratulations on 29 years.
Yeah, congrats.
I'd be interested to hear, in terms of Swiss foundations, what sort of volume you still see going there today. I think the draw card there it's Switzerland. Back in the day, you had a numbered Swiss bank account, and in the movies now you have a Cayman Islands bank account. But I understand that it's quite the process for the foundation there, and it's quite restrictive once you're set up. But are people still going there?
Yeah, sure. So being transparent, right? I obviously have a bias, and with any new client, I would communicate that bias, and I have a lot to say about why Cayman. I think what we've seen as far as Switzerland is less Swiss foundations and more Swiss associations. And again, I'm not a Swiss lawyer, but for several reasons, one of them being it's hard to form a Swiss foundation because you have to capitalize it with fiat or with like a dollar or Swiss franc or whatever it is, but you can't capitalize it with like USDC, right? And to capitalize it, you also need that Swiss bank account. That thing takes a very long time to set up. Also, when it comes to dissolution, Swiss foundations are hard to dissolve. So that's why if you like ever do some deep research, they're like, oh, the Ethereum Foundation should have been a Swiss association, Swiss Verein, right? Easier to set up. But then when it's not a Swiss foundation, there's some really tricky sort of prove it up, like administrative debt and ongoing burden to show that this should have like tax optimized status. I mean, there's just a ton of problems with it, in my opinion. And again, we've gone through maybe 2 or 3 this year. Never really my strongest preference, but like we did have a team that was all UK based, where one of the founders had like an uncle in Switzerland, and he had a nexus there, and he was just like, it's easier, better for me. They should do it. I do think all European teams sometimes there's just practicality, right, of engaging with Cayman. If you're based in the US, it makes a ton of sense, right? If you're based in the US and you're doing a Swiss association or foundation. Solana, they had boots on the ground out there, right? They had this guy, Eric, who's the chief science officer. He stayed in Switzerland so he could be closer to and help man the foundation. I mean, it was just a major headache and a major pain in the ass. So, yeah. But I mean, we could talk about it, more offline.
Okay, well, if we don't have any additional questions, I think we're pretty good for time. So I don't know if Caitlin wants to say any final words for CEC.
I think I'll wrap it up.
Cool.
So, firstly, thank you very much to the panelists. Really appreciate it, guys. I think that was a great conversation, very good perspectives. I think from sort of the foundation side, regulated entity, Mark, I think very interesting from your perspective as well. Thank you very much for everyone coming out, to Stepping Stones, BACI, CEC for organizing this. And if everyone can join us for a drink at the back afterwards, we'd love to catch up with everyone. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.